Art teachers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing artwork a student has ever submitted? My kids in Korea presented me with this masterpiece one day. Note their sweet little names at the bottom. A yellow smiley face with sad mouth with the big black words written on. I want to eat a lot of medicine to kill myself. My parents hate me. The kid is 10 years old. My little brother got in trouble for drawing a picture of a polar bear eating a seal. Lots of red crayon was used. He was like 9. I didn't get why it was a big deal. It's not like it doesn't happen. Obligatory, not an art teacher, but in high school we had a kid whose art portfolio was displayed at the school's art show. Numerous drawings, sketches, paintings, etc. of tadpoles. From a single one to dozens to hundreds. A full 2 years of art classes dedicated to tadpoles. Until he informed everyone he was drawing sperm. I had a male college drawing eye student who liked to draw pictures of beautiful women screaming. I can see how this could easily be goth, pretty camp, or trying too hard to be edgy. It wasn't any of those things. He just really liked pictures of women in distress and seemed obsessed by the idea of it. I jokingly told him to use his powers for good and not for evil, and that it's better to get your emotions out in drawing than in the real world. I had this kid I'll call Joe. He had special needs but loved movies. He hated everyone but me. I was his first male teacher ever. He would often draw me pictures of Godzilla and King Kong. It was awesome. When he went to the next grade, he drew a picture of his new teacher being eaten by sharks. She freaked. Called a whole bunch of meetings. Went nuts. She was saying that she was scared that he wants her dead and that she feared for her life. I was asked to have a talk with the kid. I asked him what the picture was and he said it was the lady from Jaws, Ivy, being eaten by Jaws. We then proceeded to talk about how Jaws 1 and 2 are awesome. When I was in HS, a really weird guy would ignore the instructions for any assignment and just draw pictures of people being murdered, cut up, burned alive. All kinds of crazy shit. The teachers never did anything. One day after school he pulled a knife and stabbed my friend in the hand for being a Jew. Suspended for 2 weeks. He told someone he was going to shoot up the school like Columbine. Luckily the person he told called the police. When they came to the kid's house they found a rifle and drawings of the school. He was planning on setting a fire in the chemistry lab, and when people came out the other side of the building he would be sitting in the bleachers of the football field with the rifle. I don't know what happened after he got arrested, but hopefully he's never ducking getting out of prison. This guy is seriously dangerous. Also, our teachers and school administration were clearly ducking braindead. Not a teacher but a student in class painted pictures of wrist cutting, self-harm and suicide. It even went on display for the whole school to see. Not an art teacher but I worked at an elementary after school program when I was 17. Instead of coloring in the picture, the kid took a black crayon and was just scribbling over the page, singing to the tune of Barney, I hate you. You hate me. Always unnerve me. You remember the Superbad movie scene with the Dees? My friend did that about 15 years before the movie and someone turned it into the teacher. He got suspended for a few days and his parents had to come in and review the notebook with the principal. I mean, it was filled front to back with Dees. Not a teacher, but in 2nd grade I was infatuated with the battleship Bismarck. I also loved the flag on it with the red background and white circle with that cool box thingy. We had to build a design to look like a quilt using construction paper. I did mine using the Nazi flag. It looked 100% like it. My teacher didn't say a word, but when I showed it to my parents they burned it. It took me until 5 years to figure out why they did that. High school 1977. While everyone else is drawing Pink Floyd rainbows and peace signs all over everything, the biggest burnout in the class makes a wide metal bracelet with intricate triangular designs cut out of it. He turns it in and gets a great grade for the first project he ever bothered finishing and some well-deserved praise for his effort. Teacher hands our work back and first thing he does is grab a pair of pliers and bends all the triangles outward, making a thick metal spiked bracelet. I found that devilishly, disturbingly clever. When I was in kindergarten, I drew a male ghost going to the bathroom. I had older brothers, so it was very detailed, and I even put a water line on the testicles, because that is where I thought urine was stored. The teachers and principal called in my parents for a serious conference and asked my dad what he was going to do about the picture. After my dad finished laughing, he told them that he was going to make copies and send them to all of his friends and relatives for Halloween. And he did. That was 40 years ago, and I still have a few extra copies if any of you need them. Oh, and I found out that balls do not, in fact, store urine. Back in the 90s I volunteered at an art studio that provided free classes for low-income inner-city at-risk youth. Wonderful non-profit run by a couple of cool old hippie ladies who did an amazing job helping the kids feel free to express themselves artistically no matter what they wanted to create. For example, one teenage smartass made an elaborate paper mache of Bob Marley smoking a huge joint and they hung it proudly in a place of honor. No judgment or preachiness at that art class. So one year they decided to have the younger kids do a Day of the Dead themed picture with a short paragraph to commemorate a loved one. The teachers were expecting pictures of grandmas or maybe pets, and there were some of those. There were also several scenes of murder, including childishly drawn guns, knives and oh so much red, followed by short descriptions like, "My brother got shot. He dead now. It was loud and scary. I miss him." These were like 7-9-year-olds. Those pictures were displayed just as proudly as the grandma pics. Not an art teacher, but a kid in my art class in 6th grade straight up just drew Hitler. It was pretty good too. Not an art teacher, but this question reminds me this haunting photograph. A girl who grew up in a concentration camp draws a picture of home while living in a residence for disturbed children. 1948. You can read more about it here. My school was unlucky in that almost every year a student died. It was a big deal for us, as each year only had around 60 students. Well, my younger brother had this classmate that said my brother was probably going to be the one who died. It was ducked but no one really cared because my brother was his kind of odd. Kid ended up dying during open heart surgery. In my brother's art class they made a quilt, and my brother's square only said "Karma's rich." Not a teacher but a student. The art exam was draw self-portrait, size A3, in relation to any of the following 4 emotions: happiness, anger, love and sadness. We then had to do an artist statement explaining our work. Capital I, like majority of the level chose sadness. Most PPL did variants of either sadness or anger, and gave this deep artist statement about how people try to hide pain with a smile but eventually they were gonna crack and all the sadness would come pouring out. The others did something similar. During script checking, the teacher simply spent the whole hour going on about how we all needed therapy. High school. Put a construction paper origami box on his locker 2 steps outside my classroom. Did a drawing of weapons with the message "If you have someone in the school you need dealt with, leave their name and 50 cents. He didn't see the problem with this and insisted that it was a joke. This was years after Columbine, but still, weird thing to joke about. This is the same kid that chose to do a project on Uruguay, because it sounds like you're saying you're a gay. Edit. No, it did not say sense. It said sense. That was my bad. But I'll be honest with y'all, I don't remember writing this lol. Did I sleep Reddit? WTFFF. Not an art teacher but there was a kid in my art class who would always draw super dark things. Not so much scary but more depressing. I figured he might have a crappy home life and I noticed he didn't really have friends so I thought I could talk to him and just be friendly. He seemed really nice. Just a little weird. Flash forward about 3 months. And wow am I glad I was nice to that guy. He got called down to the principal's office during class but no one knew why. We finally found out he had written a hit list and had been suspended for a month. Seems a little lax but whatever. He comes back to class and no one wants to go near him. At the end of class however, he comes right up to me and says, "Don't worry, you weren't on the list." Not a teacher. My sister drew a bus full of the kids in her class and the teacher going off of a cliff. Pretty sure that was a big deal. She's doing better now but it's been pretty rocky recently. Still not sure if she was heavily bullied then or what. Another one from my perspective, but not as dark. In the 10th grade I was bored and doodling to a concert posters. I tried to doodle one for a non-existent Lil Ugly main concert. It had a line from a song going into a spiral. all letters looking really sketchy, like the Slender logo somewhat. So my chemistry teacher walks by and he sees this scribbled spiral of doom on my notebook saying, "Corrupted by the darkness, now you fall into an endless sleep," and taps me, then telling me something along the lines of, "If you gonna shoot up the school, tell me first." I was confused for a bit until I noticed how clebbald my notebook looks and told him, "Nah, I ain't white man." He was a cool ass teacher mayo. The amount of not an art teacher on an art teachers of Reddit thread. My old ceramics teacher would find all these bongs that people would try to make. He took them and dropped them by accident near the students who made them. He also didn't clean up the mess the student did. I had a second grader kid draw a picture of me and him together and my hand was behind him. He wrote, "Coach Cuthbert likes to touch me." I don't believe I had ever touched him. Not really that type of person. However, it was pretty embarrassing. Edit. Changed said to wrote for more clarity. Not a teacher but a student. A guy a few years above me had his girlfriend cheat on him and so did a huge, 2x2m, sculpture of a V with a throbbing heart in it. The sentiment was that he'd trusted her and left his heart there, and she'd just torn him up. This was heavy for a bunch of 16-year-olds. Teacher from Germany here. We have a lot of refugees from Syria here. Some of them are traumatized. Occasionally you get a really depressing picture of a bombed city or pictures of refugee camps. If they know how to use pencils. Some of them had been on the run for 2-3 years and lost a lot of the skills they had learned in their schools. Quite a challenge for us teachers, but we're doing our best. I accidentally made a very realistic V in my pottery class. This happened to me during one of my ceramics classes in college. The professor was teaching us how to use the pottery wheel to make bowls. If you can imagine the act of throwing a bowl out of clay, the clay is pulled up taller and wider as the pottery wheel spins. I'm doing my thing, making a real nice bowl. Then at a certain point it all collapsed inward from two opposite sides, the clay folding in on itself as it fell, and the weight causing the original bowl shape to elongate. I was left with what looked like a perfectly detailed clay V. So naturally I left it as it was, and fired it, glazed it. Now years later, I sneak it into friends' houses and put it on their bookshelves. When they find it, they shake their heads, laugh and do the same thing to someone else in the friend cycle. I call it the Brotherhood of the Traveling V. Edit. For those interested, here is a photo. NSFW. Edit. Word arrangements. Not the teacher. I was the kid. Little background. Grew up in a small beach town and was somewhat known for my artwork and being a pretty good artist for a little kid. 8th grade we had to design a deck of playing cards. I was 13 and going through a really hard time and made this series of super dark cards. Like the Fallen King and the Dead Joker, Queen of Human Hearts, Hanged King, etc. I really enjoyed working on them and loved how they turned out. Very dark but also colorful. Like Dali meet Tim Burton. Anyway. I went to a small private school and our cards were going to be on display for this art show. Mine weren't allowed in the show and weren't allowed to be displayed for being too dark and my teacher said I need to therapy. Which, surprise, I was already in and was told to express my negative feelings through my art. Which I did, and then got in trouble for it and denied a place in an art show. Still have the cards. Still think they are dope. Still bitter about not being in the art show. A girl in my art class had just come back from hospital and was told that she should use these hours as a form of therapy. We were allowed to draw whatever we wanted, so she spent hours clawing over this huge charcoal drawings. They were of severe anorexic girls who were exaggerated even more. Sadly, she was praised for these and it led to an increase in the number of students suffering from eating disorders. She left again after a couple of months because she was so ill again. Lovely girl. But a lot of problems. Obligatory. I am not an art teacher. When my parents sent me to a therapist to figure out why I wasn't turning out to be the child they'd hoped, she hands me paper and crayons and says draw a woman. I was playing Wasteland at the time, and I drew what I imagined a female member of the party to look like. It's a sci-fi RPG, so she had post-apocalyptic clothes and twin uses, something I'd spent quite some time earning in the game. This earned me the obsession with violent imagery and inappropriate female archetype merit badges with her. Lady, you said draw a woman. not draw your idea of the perfect lady. I just happened to have gotten a cool new thing in a video game the night before.